Welcome, everyone, to the PCI Practical Matters podcast. This is 10 Myths of Government Contracting, myth number 8. Take it away, Tim.
Thank you, Fritz. Myth number 8. We can treat our government customers the same way we treat our commercial customers. You probably know this, but over the past 30 years or so, the government contract sector has been a sector that has seen a lot of new entrants. Now, many of these newcomers were and are experienced commercial concerns that have decided to give the government sector a try. Others are just new companies. Now, of these two types of new entrants, some have succeeded better than others, but all of them have bruises to show for it. That's because they made the mistake of focusing on the potential sales they could make rather than on the procedures and practices that are involved in government contracting. They learned about those the hard way. Several years ago, I visited a software company in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. The CEO had invited me out to discuss a problem they had run into with a civilian federal agency. I sat down with the CEO and several senior executives, and they told me how their company had lost about $800,000 on a contract that was their first and only U.S. government contract. And they asked me if I thought there was a solution to the problem. I said, before I answer that question, can I ask you a few questions? Of course, they said. First, who is the contract administrator? Well, the CEO answered, we don't have anyone here with that kind of title. What does a contract administrator do? After I explained, the CEO said, well, John keeps the correspondence, Sally has all the contract documents, and Ken is our point of contact with the agency's program manager. Although the CEO's answer had already answered my next question, I asked it anyway. Where is the contract file? And of course, I learned that there was no such thing as a contract file, but that John, Sally, and Ken each kept what was important to their responsibilities. Now, any experienced government contractor listening to me right now would be shaking their head because a splintered approach to a federal government contract is a recipe for trouble. While that approach may be typical in a commercial setting, it's far too risky for a government contractor that will be dealing with one contracting officer who maintains the master contract file and through whom all important documents, discussions, and decisions must flow. The importance of centralized and knowledgeable contract administrators in your company is not the only distinction between the government contracting world and the commercial world, but it certainly is a significant difference. Now, sales and marketing practices also need to be studied in advance. The types of things that are common in the commercial sector, entertainment, golf outings, meals, for example, are handled in an entirely different manner in government contracting. Now, while federal government employees may be able to accept certain things up to a $20 value, actually the gift must be $20 or less as long as it's not cash. And the employee may accept no more than $50 in gifts in the aggregate from a single source in a calendar year. But companies that engage in these practices are flirting with trouble if they go beyond the limit. And both the contractor and the government employee could end up in hot water. As a result, many of the major prime contractors out there impose similar, if not tougher, limitations on their employees when it comes to entertainment, gifts, and things of that nature. The rule of thumb here should be that you never want to embarrass your customer. Now, in order to achieve this goal, you have to familiarize yourself with the rules that govern your customer. The pricing practices you use in the commercial sector might also be a problem for you in the government arena. For example, if you're selling goods through the GSA's Federal Supply Schedule, you're governed by something called the Price Reduction Clause. Now, this clause and its potential problems are a worthy topic of much more discussion, much more than we would cover in a short myth discussion. But in essence, before the contract is awarded under the federal supply schedule, the government and the contractor review the contractor's customer list and select a customer or class of customers that will serve as the basis for the federal supply schedule award. Once the contract is awarded, if there are any improvements to the pricing that contractor offers that profile customer or customers, the contractor is required to pass on the same pricing improvements to the government under the federal supply schedule. And the failure to do this could lead to both civil and criminal liability. Given these risks, contractors have to train their sales force to avoid any such infractions, and they must implement policies and controls designed to prevent them from occurring. Similarly, inexperienced contractors rarely have accounting systems that are tailored to the government customer. As a contractor becomes more reliant on government business, however, it will discover that simply having a system that conforms to generally accepted accounting principles will not impress a government auditor. This can be a problem if a contractor is seeking reimbursement for an equitable adjustment under the changes clause or seeking recovery under a claim. The lack of an adequate accounting system can be fatal to either situation because, as the judges like to say, the contractor has the burden of proof in proving both entitlement, that is, you're entitled to recover, and quantum, that is, the amount of money or time that you are entitled to recover. Now, my list of examples could go on, but it probably is a better idea to say that a company doing business with the US government for the first time needs to either hire or align itself with people who have experience dealing with this very unusual and demanding customer. You should also think of dedicating a group within the company to the government sector, centralizing all government-related activities. The failure to take these two simple steps simply means that the question is not whether your company is going to run into trouble with the government customer, but when.